Welcome to School's Out 80s Comedy Story Time.
Hey everybody, welcome to School's Out 80s Comedy Story Time. Got a really special guest today coming to us all the way from Daytona Beach, Florida. Ben Terrell, say hello to everybody at School's Out 80s.
Hey, John. Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Awesome, Ben, man. You know, it's Friday. I call it Fly Day, so I'm an excited camper, I must say.
Fridays are best, really. You got the
Oh,
weekend coming
man.
up, all the food, all the fun.
Absolutely, man. Okay, so this is all about, schools out 80s. Now, I know you didn't necessarily go to high school in the 80s. You were kind of maybe in middle school and or grade school in the 80s, which is fine. But I also like to talk about like high school because man, high school is some of the best times for a lot of us. Did you have a good time in high school, Ben?
I did, so much so that I wasn't considered popular. I was considered infamous.
I love it, man. I love it. That's greatness. Okay, so on that, to piggyback on that, so you guys got yearbooks, I guess, when you're in high school, like the hardbound yearbooks back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So was there like a line? Like, was there a line, to get you to sign their yearbook?
No, I don't think so. I
Okay,
think
no
the
worries.
study
I
halls.
just curious.
Yeah.
All good, all good. I kind of got a funny story about that, but I accidentally somehow got somebody else's yearbook that said John on it, and all these people signed John's yearbook, and it wasn't even mine.
Well, that's pretty cool. Made you
When
seem
it,
a whole. I
yeah,
probably felt really popular by then.
yeah, yeah, that John guy, he really did well. I got home and I had like 4 signatures, and I'm like, Dad, would you please sign my yearbook?
Right.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk more about high school. Did you play sports in high school?
I played sports up until high school. I
Mhm.
did. I wanted to mess around. I wanted to have fun, so I did a lot of
No
having
worries,
fun.
man. All good.
Yeah.
All good. What sports did you play prior to high school?
So I was in wrestling and I was in football. I think I loved football the most.
I could see you in football. So, were you I like guessing people's positions in football, so I'm just gonna throw this out. So, were you a linebacker?
Yep.
Ah, there you go. I could be a football coach.
Yep. I played defense and I
Uh-huh.
was really good at sacking the quarterback. In fact, they had to put two guys on me usually to keep me from sacking the quarterback during the game. Yeah.
I believe that. Oh, man, I would not wanna be the quarterback and see you coming running. Ooh. No, sir. Okay, so let's talk about high school a little bit. I imagine you got some really funny stories about high school. So let's talk about the lunchroom because typically the lunchroom's a good place for a funny story. Can you share one with us?
Well, yeah, definitely. The lunchroom usually does have some funny stories because you sit with your friends, you make a lot of jokes, you get into trouble, you fling food at
Right?
each other, that kind of thing, right?
Sure.
As high school wore on, I took open campus pretty seriously because at the time I was a cigarette smoker. Now, of course, you can't
Okay.
smoke in
Okay.
school, and you're not supposed to
Yeah.
smoke on school grounds.
Right.
So I made sure that I had lunch and then two study halls in my class schedule, so that if I
Sure.
wanted to, I could take a nice break. I could even head home and take a nap if I wanted to. But yeah, I'd definitely go out and have a cigarette, during lunch or right after lunch. And if I didn't want
Yeah.
to eat whatever they were serving that day, I lived 5 minutes away from the school. I could just go home and make something good for lunch. So
Okay.
yeah, most of my lunch periods were me trying to get away with smoking cigarettes somewhere on school grounds without getting caught.
There you go. Awesome. Awesome. That brings up good points. So like back in the day in high schools, people are smoking. Everybody's kind of like tries to brag about how great of a smoker or whatever. But so do you remember back in the day maybe sharing a cigarette or sharing whatever you shared and somebody coughing ferociously?
Oh, for sure. In fact, I was probably the one that coughed the worst. That's one of the reasons I quit. It wasn't it wasn't good for me. So,
Yeah.
principal smoked, and there was a rule passed that you can't smoke on school grounds. But when we saw him breaking that rule out behind the lunchroom, we knew that we could probably get away with that too. So a lot of
You
us
jumped
did.
on it.
Yeah.
That's funny. I can remember an instance in high school and a buddy of mine, we were sharing a cigarette and he took a puff off of it, and then he just started coughing so bad, and his eyes were watering or whatever, and then he turns to me and he goes, "That's pretty smooth," and I'm just like trying not to just like die laughing, you know? It's just like,
So smooth you couldn't deal with it, right?
yeah, so smooth, you almost coughed up a lung.
Oh, that
So
must have been a menthol. Oh gosh,
yes,
my bad.
yes. Okay, so another good question. So as we think about high school, in the lunchroom, it's not unusual for like fights to break out in the lunchroom. Did you guys ever have those?
It was a pretty small high school.
Yeah.
Most of the kids were farm kids, or we lived in that small, little town of maybe
Yeah.
2,000 people back then. And so there weren't that many fights. Plus, one of the principal's kids was in my class, and
Okay.
so he had to stay out of trouble because there was certain requirements. If you're the principal's kid, you stay out of trouble so you don't make dad look bad.
Right.
But occasionally
Right.
there was
Sure.
fights, and I think one of them happened after lunch, and that was because there was a kid that used to run his mouth. His last name was we called him Mouthy, even though it was Mothy was his last name, and there was
Okay.
definitely some fists thrown because of that mouth. And I regret to say I was one of them involved in that. But sometimes when you're a kid, you don't deal with things really very well. You don't deal
Oh
with them
yeah.
with comedy like we're doing right now,
Right.
and
Right.
you take it out on each other. But he and
Yeah.
I are
Yeah.
friends now, so it's all good.
Oh, that's nice. So you're friends with Mouthy. So when the fight was going on, did like some of the coaches like grab you guys by the neck and stuff and break it? How did it get broken up?
Well, it happened pretty quick because it ended up with him in a locker, kinda, and,
Okay, so you threw him in a locker?
he was already kinda at his locker when it started, and, yeah,
Oh,
it
I like
didn't end up great for him, and, we ended up in the principal's office. Not much came of it, I guess
yeah,
unfortunate for me, but that was the
yeah,
last time I had to worry about, him mouthing off to me, at least when we were kids. Nowadays, if he does that, I'll probably just laugh at the joke, but back then I was,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was something we didn't get split up, but, I
Uh-huh.
definitely got called into the office on that one. That was a serious enough they called me to the office for that.
Okay, yeah, no, no worries. That's funny. So were you one of those guys in high school? Did you make it like every single day on time, or did you find yourself like tardy to class?
I was usually, at school within 1 minute of the bell, and so it was okay. I mean, I sat in
Okay,
class
so you
usually
made it then.
right on time. I was so close. I was so close. I
Yeah,
had my driver's license, I had my own car, and so it wasn't that tough for me to make it there on time. The deciding factor was whether I got my cigarette done in time so I could jump out of the
right.
car and run to
Yeah,
class.
that's understandable. So let me guess, Marlboro Lights?
Camel lights most of the time.
I was
Camel lights.
close. And what a cool picture, the camel lights, because if you look at there's like a guy in there, like
In the
in the
back leg.
camel.
Yeah.
Yeah, the back thinks it's like a cowboy or something inside of it.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's kinda wild.
Well, the
Um,
illustrators were always looking for ways to attract people to smoking. And when do they attract them? They attract people when they're young. And so they always try to
yeah,
put in some sort of subliminal thing to make you think, oh, these are really cool. I can't wait to have
right?
cancer with these. So yeah, we definitely smoked the ones. Joe Cool, remember those images and that those packaging things were out there back then. So it was a
Yeah,
cartoon that wanted you to
yeah.
smoke.
It
Crazy.
makes a lot of sense to me. Well, the thing about cigarettes is that, like, it is so addicting because the chemical they put in them too. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's funny, but it is true. Okay, so we're in high school. Imagine you had some pretty, you mentioned being infamous. Imagine you enjoyed some really great high school parties. Am I correct?
Oh, we definitely had a few. Yeah, there was some fun parties. I think most of them happened near the river. So
I like it.
we had public access to the river, but it was out in the country, and so
Mhm.
I mean, the town cop really didn't go out there because it wasn't within city limits, so we were safe from that. And the sheriff deputies were too busy, doing other things to really bother
Yeah,
us. It wasn't until someone, usually we didn't call them Karens back then, but
right.
somebody that didn't mind their own business decided to call in that darn party because
That
the church
darn
would not be
party.
good with that. The church would not be happy about this party, and their kid might be out there. So we'd have to
Yeah,
toss our
somebody
beer
could
and
be saved
run.
at that party, so, I don't wanna downplay that.
Yeah, yeah, you could. I mean, there's things that can happen at parties, but we're talking about pretty tame stuff. We're talking about
Yeah,
AC/DC, Guns N' Roses,
I
some
like
people
it.
drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, spinning their tires on their pickup trucks, and
Sure.
you know,
Hey, did you guys have, like, a keg of beer in one of the pickup trucks, or d were you guys
sometimes
buying cases of beer?
usually it was cases of beer, so it was so much
Okay.
easier back then to get a case of beer. You pay the person that's working at the convenience store because you know them. You go to class with them.
Right,
You give them the money. They set the beer out back behind the building so you can pick it up when no one's looking. No one gets in trouble, and you get your
right.
beer. So that's how
Yes.
that worked.
Very familiar with that, and then back in the day, in the '90s, you didn't yet have the pull top, so you probably still had the tabs on them, and that was a lot of fun to, like, take the tabs off and make, like, necklaces out of them and such.
We used them as projectiles. So you'd put it on your
Flip
finger and then
them.
you flick it at
Yeah,
somebody. Oh, what did you do that for? Yeah, that kind of
right?
thing.
You can see why they got rid of those. I mean, bad for the fish and everything else, like, there was
For
nothing
sure.
good that came out of those. I
There's a
used to
good
always cut my
there's a good
fingers
ton of
on them.
aluminum in that river, I think, from all those cans.
Yeah, I used to cut my fingers on those things. I mean, God, it was probably until they came out with the pull tops. Not that I'm a huge beer drinker. I am a big beer drinker, but with those pull tabs, I mean, God, I always had like cuts on my fingers from those things, man, because I'm creative, so I'd constantly like bend them and whatever.
Right.
And then like we made necklaces out of them and earrings out of them. And
Wow.
if it could be made out of them, we made it out of them. I love it though. So you guys went to the river. I imagine it was guys and girls. You're
Oh, yeah.
blasting the GNR. You're blasting the ACDC. That's fun. How many
We were
people were
getting
there
pickup
normally?
trucks stuck, trying to get the pickup truck unstuck one time with two-wheel drive. I don't know why my dad bought a two-wheel drive Chevy pickup, but he did. And I
Ah,
took that out
okay.
there, and then I got stuck. And the strongest friends I had were out there, and they helped push, and we rocked it back and forth. And I
Did
finally
you get
got
it
it to
out?
go. And as I was flooring it to get out of there, I spun up mud on everybody.
I love it. That's funny.
And that was the last time they ever helped me out of a rut like that.
So all your buddies just got splattered in mud.
That's right.
That's greatness. I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, sad for them, funny for you. That is funny though.
Yeah, yeah, it was good
Oh
memories. I mean,
man.
they wouldn't have said they were happy about it at the time, but it made for a really good story.
That is a good story. So I got a good river story kind of growing up in Missouri, however you want to say it. But my
Misery.
friends always came up with these ideas. It'll probably spark one of your stories too. But my friends always came up with these ideas that sounded good at the time. And then looking back, I think we were just complete idiots. Like, how did they think that sounded good? But a buddy of mine had a house on the river, Missouri River, and so we were out doing our normal shenanigans. And a lot of times we would just pull out to like a four-way stop out in the country where no cops are going to be. And all of our friends would, be out there. I mean, there's probably maybe like 70, 80 people. I mean, it wasn't small. And we're blasting out. I don't think Guns N' Roses was going on then, but we were blasting out Judas Priest, living after midnight. I mean, we're getting after it. And and then my buddies are like, okay, let's go to the river house and crash. And so we go to the river house and crash, but it was never like good enough just to like go in the river house to crash. One of them's like, "Hey, do you want to do the rope swing into the river?" This is like midnight, right? And and I kind of have always been like that voice of reason in an unreasonable world. And even at like 16 years old, I thought that was a stupid thing to do. So my buddies, who much more out there than myself, they're like, "John, will you hold the flashlight?" That's how dangerous this was. So I got to get you to picture this. So it's a rope swing into the river off of a tree. Now, the reason why you need the flashlight is because you got to get enough loft off the rope to actually get far enough out into the river. Because if you let go too soon, there were rocks. And so, one, I shine the flashlight out into the river. I'm like holding it up. I'm like 16 years old. And then I had to say, jump. So that, like, they jumped. Otherwise, they would come back and hit the rocks. And if they let go, they would land into the rocks. I mean,
Oh,
these are the people I grew up with. And now these people are like, corporate dudes. But back then they were just like teenage idiots.
well, yeah. You first you spend the whole evening killing your brain cells with beer
Yes.
or whatever, and then you're like, "Hey, let's do something dangerous." But that's how you think when you're a teenager. You want that adrenaline rush. You want to
I
be able to
guess
feel all
so,
that.
man. Uh, I mean, it's great because it makes for a good story. But like when it was happening, it was like an out of body experience. I was like, I can't believe they don't just want to go to bed, or like, I'm starving right now. Let's go in and eat, some chips or something. I don't know.
Let's take
Okay.
care of these munchies first, guys, and we can talk about your death-defying, ankles-shattering stunts later.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I
But
hear
this is
that.
about you, Ben. So you went to Rock Valley High School, right?
Rock Valley High School. That's right.
In Rock Valley, Iowa.
Rock Valley, Iowa. We had the Rock River running through the town. That's what it was named after. And there was a few
Uh-huh.
bridges north of town. One of them has been replaced now, but before it was a great spot to just jump off into the river. Now, none of us
Oh,
did any
wow.
homework ahead of time. We had no idea
Yeah,
exactly how deep it was at the spot we were jumping
yeah,
off.
yeah.
It was more like a dare, like I dare you to do this. And so we'd first a few miles up the river, we'd float
Uh-huh.
down on inner tubes. We
I
called it
love it.
tubing. Yeah, it was fun. It
Yeah.
was summer, so we didn't have beer with us, but we were stupid enough to do anything that the one of us dared the other ones to do. And so we get to this spot and we think, well, it's deep enough. I can't quite stand up, so we should be able to jump off 20-foot bridge, no problem. And so one of
Oh,
us finally
wow.
worked up enough courage to do it. And then after that, it was jump off, quickly swim to the cement that was holding up the bridge, hang on because otherwise the current would take you, and then inch yourself over again to the
Wow.
side, crawl all the way back up the ditch, and then back up on. And the whole time, semis and tractors are going by. It's not exactly a safe space anyway. But if
It
you run
doesn't
out there,
sound
there's
like
no
a safe
cars, jump
space.
off. Man, there was one brain cell between all 4 or 5 of us, I think, that day.
That's
But it was a
funny.
blast. We had so much fun.
How deep do you think the river was?
It depends on the time of year. It was usually a pretty shallow river, like 4, 5, 6, 7 feet. So the spot we were at, fortunately, narrowed because there was a
Yeah.
bridge there, and that made the water a little bit deeper. And so we jumped off of there. It was probably 7, 8 feet deep, just in that spot where we were jumping off. Had we been
Oh
a
my
few feet that way or
God.
that way, it would have been, you would have landed and your feet would have been in the mud by maybe a foot deep.
Okay, so you're hitting mud, so it wasn't
Mm,
rock at the bottom of the river.
no, the
So
Rock
it's a
River is a
dirty river
misnomer.
then.
There's no rocks around. I mean, there's
Okay, well,
gravel.
that makes me feel better
Yeah,
about your guys' stunt.
yeah, yeah. It
Hey,
wasn't. It wasn't a
hey.
rocky river at all. It was a muddy river. When it ran, it looked like yoo-hoo. When you look into the water, it looks like yoo-hoo. It's about that same color.
Okay.
Um,
So
it
you
was
did a
given the name
20
from
foot
a town up north,
is that a 20-foot drop into 8-foot water?
something like that. Yeah. Now the drop would have been, let's see, it was pretty even with the road, so another. It was at least 10 feet. But by the time you got up on the side of the railing,
Yeah.
it's probably at least 15 feet. 20 feet might have been an exaggeration. It
Okay,
was
so
high enough
15
that it was
feet to the
fun.
water.
Yeah.
and then you feel like probably another, and you felt like it was 10 feet. So it's still a pretty, but wow. So I think about it and I feel like you would have had to land on your knees versus landing on your feet, or just would have stunted you. Like
I
it would
think
have
the
like
time that we did this,
done.
there had been a little bit of flooding. It had been maybe the day after we had rain,
Okay.
and that river would go up and down with the rain. So it was a narrow river at that spot. So it was higher than normal, and the
Okay.
water was a lot faster than normal. Plus, there was traffic going by. All those things together made it seem maybe a little more dangerous than it would seem for
Yeah.
us as adults looking at it now. But at the time, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, we had a good time.
Man, that sounds like that's a great story, by the way. Okay, so dating in high school. I always like to ask this question. Probably didn't happen because I don't think a lot of people did this back in the day, particularly if you're from a small town. Any blind dates you ever went on, or even like post high school? Any blind dates you ever went on? Anything's fine.
So no blind dates that I can think of.
So all your dates could see then, I guess.
All my dates had really good vision.
Okay. That's always
And
an easy joke. I always throw that one out.
well, the first one I remember that was
Uh,
really kind of fun was the one I took to junior prom, and that was just one of my best friend's cousins, and she just happened to be in town, and I guess she had just moved there, and so I thought, oh, this girl doesn't know me yet. I have a chance, and so we went to prom. We went out for a month or two, I think, and it didn't quite work out, but that's okay.
yeah,
There was no blind dates because everybody knows everybody out there. It was a
yeah,
city a town really of 2,000 people, and
yeah.
even the towns nearby, we're talking, an extra 10,000 people in a 20-mile radius. There
Oh,
wasn't a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
people out there, mostly
So you
farmland.
probably like your parents knew their parents. They might even have gone to school together, right?
My parents knew my best friend's parents, not real well, but everybody knew
Uh-huh.
everybody in that town. We were transplants. We moved in from, let's see, West Virginia, then Kentucky, and then Iowa. My dad was a pastor of a small church there in
Oh,
town.
yeah, that's what you're saying.
So,
Okay.
yeah, everybody knew who I was.
I bet. Yeah, so you were a pastor's son. So any youth group shenanigans back in the day,
We were
going
too
on like
small to even have a youth group, really.
okay.
I knew of other churches that had youth groups because they were a little
Yeah,
bit larger. Really, every story we had ended up with us first going to the local grocery store, which
yeah.
back then you could still have cigarettes right there on the counter next
Okay.
to the candy.
Yeah,
So
okay.
they
Okay.
were they were thinking ahead, these cigarette companies. We want them to be stolen. At least that's what I tell myself. And so we would go in and steal some cigarettes. Then we would head up on top of a building that we could climb up onto. That way, no one would see us or hear us, and we could
Sure.
go and smoke cigarettes and not get in trouble for it. So that was most of my summers from junior high until I got a driver's license. We would go, and the shenanigans were always, let's see what we can steal, and then go back up on top of this building and then count our loot, check out what kind of
Oh,
cigarettes did we
no,
get
that's
this
funny.
time. Did anybody get a lighter? Oh, you idiot. Did you at least bring matches? How are we going to smoke these
Okay.
things? Cool. You
Yeah,
stole some playing cards. Let's play a game up here. That kind of stuff.
I
It
see.
wasn't real
Okay.
wild up there.
Yeah, no, no worries, no worries. So, okay, concerts.
Hmm.
You probably were quite a ways away from being able to see a rock concert. Would you have to go to Kansas City to see a rock concert?
The nearest decent sized city would have been either Sioux City, Iowa, or even better, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So
Okay.
it was somewhere between 93 and 95. I went to see a band with my friends called Queensryche.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you know who they are. They
I,
had a
I,
hit at the
yeah.
time
I
called
got a
Sparkle.
picture with Queens, right? Like I've
Yeah,
met those guys backstage.
very cool British band, if I remember correctly, British band.
I think
And
they're German, actually.
are they? They might
I'm
be.
pretty sure they're German. They
They
didn't talk
had
to me. They just got their picture taken with me. That's
yeah,
it.
they're really really cool guys. It seems like I know a lot
Yeah.
of people that have met the folks from Queensryche, and
Yeah.
they had the best light show that year of any metal band out there, any rock band.
Yeah.
It won awards.
Oh, wow.
So I
That
got
sounds
spoiled
fun.
rotten for every other concert I've ever been to. No
Yeah.
one lives up to that light show. So that was my
Right,
first
right.
experience.
So Queens, right? So, so did you say you saw those folks in South Dakota?
Yeah, Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Okay.
So you've got northwest Iowa right here, and just a few miles away is the border of South Dakota, and you can drive up into Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So if you had to do any heavy duty shopping at Walmart, that was where you had to go. If you wanted to see a movie, that's where you had to go. If you
Oh, well, right now that the sun has set in Dallas, Texas, now it looks like you got a good lighting on your face. I kind of look like the Queen album cover, you know.
yeah, right. I learned early on from
Yay!
working for a photographer. I worked for
Yeah.
one of the things I did. I worked for a photographer for a while, a professional photographer in Iowa. And really, if
Wonderful.
you want good looking picture or video, lots
Yeah.
of light, just lots of light, and that'll
Right.
help.
Yeah.
Um, I don't really know much about audio besides I got this Blue
That
Yeti,
is awesome what you got
and
there.
it's got a noise isolating mount,
Yes.
which is kind of cool. And
Yes.
I've got the Blue Yeti. Look at that. Got the arm. And so
Yes. You are set, Ben. I
I can move
like
it
it.
around like I'm a professional radio DJ or something. But really, all
Yes.
I'm doing most of the
Very
time
good.
is helping people, manage their health just from this spot. But this is great for podcasting too. Plus, I like to record music when I can, and so this it may not be
Yeah,
the
that's cool.
best for that, but it does an okay job with
Yeah.
audio engineering these days. You can take poor quality and make it sound cool. You can
Oh,
do a lot
yeah,
of things with the
absolutely.
computer.
Yeah. Okay, so another question I got
Sure.
is, famous people. So, out in Florida, or maybe not necessarily Florida, but just like during your lifetime, have you run into any famous people?
So I
Any
lived in Franklin, Tennessee for a while. That's just south of Nashville.
Okay.
When you hear celebrities say things like "I'm moving to Nashville this year," they're not. They're not moving to Nashville. They're moving to Franklin or Brentwood, where all the other wealthy people live. And
Okay.
I was I was working at a computer repair shop at the time, and I went to the local gas station to I don't know grab something to eat, something like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It was the morning. Maybe it was before work, and I walk in and I'm behind this guy that looks oddly familiar. He almost kind of looks like me, but thinner. And turns out it was Ron White, and he had just
Oh,
lost a bunch of
man,
weight.
you win the award. That guy is outstanding. I
Oh,
like Ron
amazing!
White.
So funny, so
Yes.
funny. He's standing in line. He's got two different 24-ounce beers, tall boys, in his hands. We all know he likes to drink. He drinks on stage constantly, and so he goes to buy these beers, and they're like,
Uh-huh.
"Sir," because they don't know who he is. "Sir, we need to see your license." He's like, "Well, I didn't bring it." And so, "Well, sir, Tennessee law, we have to see your license or we can't sell you this beer. You know the law, sir." And he goes, "Well, F your state and F your law." Only he didn't say F. And so I kind of laughed.
Oh, he did or he didn't? Oh, yeah, I
Yeah, he
understand.
said the F word because he's Ron White.
Yeah,
He's
he can.
charismatic.
He's Ron White.
He
Now
can say
he's getting
whatever he wants
material.
to.
That guy's helping him with material.
And I said, he was turned around facing, and I saw the back of his head. And I said,
Yeah.
"I'd vouch for you if I could." And he turns around and looks at me. He's got kind of a scowl on his face because this is not a situation he likes. And I said, "Because you look old enough to me." And he just kind of
That's
scowled more. And he didn't think that was very funny.
that's wild. Like,
But he,
yeah.
I think he wanted to drink and he couldn't have one, is what it came down to.
Oh,
And
so they didn't let him have beer, huh?
in fact, his friend, who I think was probably the driver of the SUV they were driving that day, came in and said, "That's okay. I'm going to buy him. I'm going to buy him." And the kid behind the counter goes, "Sir, I can't sell them to you either because now I know that you're going to buy those for him and he doesn't have his license."
Oh my God. Well, one thing I've learned from doing this podcast today with you, Ben, is I won't ever go to Tennessee anytime soon. Not without a license for
Not without
sure.
your license.
Man.
Somehow he ended up getting the beer, I'm sure, because they just drove down to the next gas station and bought it there. But you know what? He's got a good sense of humor, Ron White.
Yeah.
I
He's
walked
got to
out
be
later.
60. Like he's getting carded and he's like 60 years old, right? Like,
They didn't realize that that's who it was until after he walked out. His friend says, "You guys know who you just pissed off, right?" So that's Tater Salad, and everybody laughed and they figured out who he was at that point. I had known, but only
yeah.
barely because he had recently lost so much weight. He
Ah,
didn't look like the blue
okay.
collar comedy tour guy anymore. He was
Yeah.
all, he looked like he'd worked out and he'd lost a bunch of weight. So I walked out of the building and
Interesting.
he's filling up that SUV he's driving in, and I just kind of laughed and he waved and laughed. He eventually got over it, and it was just pumping gas outside like a normal guy. But that was the last time I had a run in with somebody that I knew was a celebrity.
Now that is a great story. I mean, I think you might have one of the best, celebrity stories I've heard, because, like, a lot of celebrity stories, like, if you hear mine, it's like, I paid $300 to sit and get Ace Frehley to sign a photograph,
Right.
and then take a picture with me. It's not like I saw him, like, out in public and whatever. I waited in line with 100 other people. That's a great story, man. I like it. I like it. Okay, so what else do I want to ask? Any funny stories like post high school that like hit you? Doesn't matter, just like any funny story, or I won't even like section it off to any, any time, uh anytime, like any real funny story you can share.
I'm trying to think back of any time. Most of my life is funny. I mean, there's always
Well,
funny
and
things
and
going
and
on.
it's an open book, so, like, I don't wanna, like, segment and throw you, like, you don't have to tell me about, like, the Rocket Valley Rockets, though I love
Right,
your,
right, right.
yeah,
So one of the brightest periods in my life was actually
uh-huh.
college. I
Okay.
moved to another state. I moved to Cherokee, North Carolina. That's the Indian reservation.
Oh, okay.
There's a family that lives there, a
Yeah.
pastor's family, just like my dad. So I moved from a pastor's family to live with another pastor's family, and I
Okay.
learned some of my best one-liners from him.
Okay.
Just stuff that I stole from him, like completely stole. I'll admit it. I stole a lot of my one-liners from this one guy named
All
Tim.
good. Most people steal 'em from, like, movies they've watched, like, everybody quotes Fletch, and then the
Yeah,
younger people don't even know what Fletch was.
right. And
So
then
they
they
think
don't get
you're
it.
just
They don't
funny.
catch that. But he would have things just off the top of his head. Whenever I'd sneeze or cough, and I'd say, "Excuse me," and he'd go, "There is no excuse for you."
Okay,
Straight
okay.
face, just like that. And he had all these good one-liners. I wish I had written a few down prior to this so I'd rattle them off for you.
Oh,
But there
that's
was always
awesome,
an
man.
answer for everything, and it was usually really funny. And I
Yeah.
learned I
Oh,
learned
that's
that
excellent.
if you're going to be a smartass in life, it's best if you're smart first. You've got to be
Yes,
smart.
you cannot be quick-witted without being witted, right? Like, you can't
Right.
be funny with it. I'll tell you a funny story because it sounds a lot like this pastor, but my dad has a friend of his, and he's probably not a technology guy, so he will not watch my podcast. But anyway, my dad's, like, one of my dad's best friends that's still living. Uh, I remember one time he had to stop by the house to give my dad something because my dad was in charge of this men's group, and so it was probably like a big stack of paperwork or something he had to give my dad, and and I was like, his name was Mr. Harris, and that's how I was taught, like, call everybody Mister, and and
Yeah.
I was like, okay, thanks, Mr. Harris. I'll get this to my dad, and he stops, he looks me straight in the eye, and he's like, now you get back to that dirty movie you're watching on HBO, boy. That's the kind of guy he was.
Yeah. Man, so much of my life was we watched a lot of sitcoms.
Yeah.
We watched a lot of NYPD Blue during that
Oh,
time.
yeah,
And
sure.
so lots of edgy stuff, and we
Yeah.
always had a good time in that household in Cherokee, North Carolina, telling
Oh, man,
jokes
that's
and
awesome.
listening to it. Some of it was PG rated, some of it not so much. We had a lot of fun. That's how I'll
Oh,
put
that's awesome,
that
man.
that little chapter of my life there.
Well, cool. Well, we're getting to the part of the show where we kind of promote what we do. I know we're going to share your website, but do you want to just kind of give us some high level information of what you do, and then people can hit your website if
Well,
they
for
want to
sure.
find out
A,
more.
a lot of it has to do with risk management,
Hmm.
keeping your money from ever being used in a way you don't want it to be. And so
Okay.
the website is my first name, Ben,
Yeah.
thinkingaboutyourhealth.com. and
Okay,
it gives
cool.
you with different ways to get in contact with me, different
Yeah.
ideas of what products to expect, that type of thing. It's really simple. And
Okay.
if you get a hold of me, one of the nice things is you don't get a bunch of phone calls from random people. You talk to just me. That phone number on the
Well,
website,
yeah, good for you,
that's my
Ben.
phone number. That's not anybody.
Yeah.
That's my phone number. So you get to talk just to me, and it's exclusive. What I do really is customer
Uh-huh.
service. It
Okay.
just happens to
Cool.
involve risk management.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, that's awesome. I'll go ahead and share what I do. I am John the Sales Warrior Sansoni. I've been professionally selling successfully for 34 years. What can I teach you? How to prospect, present, follow up, and most importantly, how to close. I have a 3-day masterclass that includes inspiration, motivation, and the mental tools to succeed in business and sales. My course includes worksheets, audio, video, and can be taken in 30 action blocks. Also included, how to have greater confidence. My course should be 400. If you get it today, $29.95. And included my book for free. Once purchased, you'll get free monthly inspiration from me. Just go to saleswarriorinspire.com and order yours today. That's it. Back to the show.
John, that stuff sounds amazing.
Man, Ben, thanks. I kind of poured my heart and soul into it. I just feel like there's a place in the market for the old guy to share the wisdom. And at some point, this old guy isn't going to be on this earth anymore. So I want to make sure that the wisdom outlives me.
So this is kind of a legacy for you. It's not just something you're doing. It's something that you're trying to impart your wisdom and your
I
knowledge
am.
for
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
now and in the future.
Yeah. 34 years of busting the pavement and, you know, putting products in front of people and selling them. Uh, I
So
feel
this is
like,
kind of part of your maybe part of your purpose in life.
I think so. Yeah, man. Not to be too philosophical, but I think I was like meant to do it. Like I thought that for a long time, but that's why I'm doing it. I don't really need the money, though. I like money. Don't get me wrong, Ben, and I will spend it. But I'm definitely not doing it for the money. Like I'm not going
Yeah,
to miss a meal if I never.
right.
But
Well,
it's
money
exploding. I mean,
made
it's
from
really fun.
altruistic reasons still spends just as good as money that you make from your regular job, right?
That's right. And at some point it could end up in charity. So like, you never know when you buy my course, at some point it could end up, behind the pulpit and going above and beyond just, going to my lake house or to the local bar where I might go. But anyway, I digress, Ben. Man, great having you on. I mean,
Thank you.
you are funny. Like you do not need material. Your persona is such that it's like it's a lighthearted persona, and I
Yeah.
and I and that's why I think like you're bigger than me, but you're still kind of like a mini me. Like you remind me of me.
No worries, man. That's great.
Like if my
I'm in
name
your
was
company.
Ben
That's
and
an
I was
honor.
from Iowa, you and I, we'd be the same. That's what
Right,
I
right.
think.
Yeah, Missouri and Iowa share a lot of things in common. A lot of the
Yes.
ways that people act toward each other, especially, is very similar. I just spent a lot of time in Missouri, actually, at
Oh
my
yeah. Oh
sister's
yeah.
house,
Yeah. I remember. Yeah, I saw that on the internet
and
on Facebook. Yeah.
her friends out there in rural Missouri, near the town of Cape Girardeau. So she's within like
Oh my
15,
God.
20 minutes of Cape
Yeah.
Girardeau,
Yeah. The
other
Cape.
end of the state, right? But very cool people. She had a
Yeah.
crisis recently, and people stepped in from her neighbors to people that at the school she worked at. The same as I would
Oh,
expect in northwestern Iowa. People
yeah.
really jump in to help each other out. In fact, people in northwest Iowa jumped in to help my mom out during this same crisis. And so a lot of wonderful people living in Missouri and Iowa. I'm
I
glad to be
agree.
from
Yeah.
those areas and to know people in those areas for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, man, again, been great having you on. So we'll go ahead and sign off and be done with the. I guess it's the May episode. Like we're getting ready to like scoot right into June and and all the hot months in Texas and Florida. But I'll just sign off first. I'll say, hey, Ben from Daytona Beach, Florida, say goodbye to everybody. School's out 80s.
Goodbye, everybody. It's been great talking to you.
And from Dallas, Texas, John the Sales Warrior. Cheers, everybody.